morning. All right. How are we doing today? Okay, today, my hope is that we can be a slight bit more interactive than we normally are in the morning. I've got some ideas on how to segment our database and how to, and what the purpose of all that is. But I also want to hear some of you guys' ideas, and we can talk some specific strategies on what marketing messages and what communication we give to all of our people. Let's start off with some good news. Who's got some good news? Pam, why don't you tell everyone about your good news?
I was just about to. Yeah, I've got a listing that's going live on Friday, and a recent listing in the area that went active, that went under contract in 2 days. They listed it Friday at 2, stopped showings on Sunday at 3, and had 35 showings during that time with 11 offers. So we're expecting a bit of activity here.
Yeah. Now, I think it's appropriate to talk a little bit about what some of those numbers are. So we were talking about, we didn't set anything. This is exactly why you shouldn't talk about price on the initial call, okay? Is because the market is moving so quickly and there's so many things that could affect a different strategy. This is a home that I listed the property like 5 years ago. For many of you guys haven't heard this story, so I'm going to tell this story really quickly. I listed the property. Another guy and his agent came and bought it. Okay, and everything was fine. I helped the seller buy up and coming. Okay, now I'm out of the picture. About a month or two ago, he emails me and says, hey, you were the listing agent for this property that I bought in Mableton, and I'd like you to help me sell it. And I said, so of course we chatted, and I asked him, I said, what'd you call me for? Right? Just curious, right? You had an agent. Why did you call me? He said, I'll tell you why I called you exactly. Because the way that your clients kept that property, I knew that the type of people they were, if that's the way they kept their property, they probably put you through the ringer to be their listing agent. And that's the kind of person I want to work with. I said, okay, cool. Right? So when we first looked at these numbers, like what, a month or so ago, maybe, Pam, we were thinking like around 350-ish or so. The home sold for like 275 5 years ago. Okay. And now we probably get close to 400 for this property.
Yeah, the other house that went under contract was listed at 389.9. She had the offer they accepted was over contract, over list price. She wouldn't tell me how much. And it had.
We're about to find out.
Yeah, well, yeah, next week. But she did have an offer over 400. However, the terms were not as good as the offer they accepted.
Wow. Okay, I say all this to say, we don't see this too much anymore. We used to do this a lot when we were in the office, but people would come up and it pissed me off every time I heard this. Somebody in the room would say, I've got it coming soon. We're going to be listed somewhere between 350 and 375. I said, well, you ain't getting 375 from anybody in this room anymore, right? Because you just told me your seller was willing to take 350. It's a different environment back then, but that's why you don't talk too much about your plans before they become official. Does that make sense? You're like, hey, I've got a new listing coming in at 350, and you publicly tell it to everybody. Some people may not be willing to pay 350. In a market like this, it doesn't really matter because there's going to be somebody that's willing to pay more than 350 anyway, but that wasn't the case 5, 6, 7 years ago. See what I'm saying? So keep your cards a little closer to the vest when you're dealing with coming soons and stuff. Okay. Make sense?
And I will say in the $300,000 to $400,000 price range in the Pebblebrook High School District, there is one active listing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, also, we could have sold that home to Susan's client last week for probably 370, right? 360,
Well, no,
370.
yeah, I mean, Susan does have buyers that might be interested. Yes.
Right. But my point is that we potentially could have sold it off market for what they would have believed, and possibly we would have believed is a better terms than we would have expected on the open market. What we were finding out is that we can get even better terms on the open market. I can't think of a single reason why somebody should be selling their home off market right now. Okay.
I'm laughing, even though you've bought your home off market.
I bought 2 homes off market. I didn't
True.
say there's not a reason to buy one off market. I said there's not a reason to sell one off market. Right. So
Well,
the
I
2
can think of a
sellers of the
couple of
homes that I
reasons, but
bought,
yeah, they're outliers.
that's a different story. But my point is that I looked it was a friend of a friend of a friend kind of, but I looked him in the face and said, there's really no reason why you should sell this to me offline. So I'm going to give you more than you should get online, offline. And he said, okay, fair enough. Right. So it's a totally different circumstance, but don't sell your home behind closed doors right now, y'all. People are getting 50 grand more than list price. Go tell the world about it. You see what I'm saying? Coming soons, I don't think you need that anymore, because you're going to get an offer and you're going to think it's good, but you're not going to know whether it's good. Does that make sense?
Yes, although technically, while it's coming soon, it should not be shown. So they would have to be putting in a blind offer.
Do you think that that's happening though?
I don't. I mean, I agree with you. I'm certain some of them are being shown, but that's not the way it's supposed to be done.
I hear you. But there's definitely blind offers being submitted. I can tell you that for sure.
Because everything's on the market for only a couple of days, if it's any good. With my buyers that we've been looking forever and put in a gazillion offers,
yeah,
I'm tired of coming soon. I'm like, it goes live this day. We're getting an appointment on this day. We're going to get an offer in. And I'm also finding that the escalation clause, a lot of the listing agents are saying you can't use an escalation clause because it's not your highest and best.
I mean, the listing, there's a lot of nuance there. The listing agent can say, hey, no escalation clause because that's not your highest and best, but that may be their highest and best. Like, that is the best terms I'm willing to give you. So they can't really define what the buyer's highest and best is. If they don't like it, or it's not that good, or there's a better offer, then they'll just choose the other offer, right? Or they could say, look, if you have an escalation clause in, we're not going to consider your offer. And if that's the case, I mean, they would be free to do that. And if that was the case, then my suggestion would be come up with your number, right? If you're like, I'll go $1,000 higher than your next best offer, well, what does that mean? Will you go to 310, 311, 312, 313, right? How high are you willing to go? Yeah, it's super tricky out there, guys. That's why it's so important to have good rapport with the other agent and have had very, very serious expectation setting sessions with your buyers. Make sense? All right, let's talk about the, thank you for sharing that, Pam. Did anyone else have anything they want to share? All right, let's talk about the database for a second. Just to remind a few people that maybe haven't heard this, what Gary Keller and the research team at Keller Williams suggest is that for every 16 people we have in our database that we communicate with systematically, which is a 36 touch. We've had several 36 touch classes. Andy and Leslie do them. There's stuff on family reunion. I mean, there's no shortage of information on what a 36 touch breakdown would look like. And we have that in our Google Drive as well. I will post it here for everyone to see as well. Okay. If you communicate with your people 36 times per year, that's a combination of calls, text, mailers, digital stuff, personal touches, client events, follow up from client events, that kind of thing. then you should receive 1 closing per year from those 16 people. Okay. So I want you to take many of us have done this privately with me, but basically you take the number of homes that you want to sell, you multiply that by 16, and that's how many met people you should have in your database as soon as possible. Once we have that in place, then we can talk about how we're going to communicate with them, okay, systematically. So what do we know? Basically, every time I get another 16 people in the database, I can count on another closing. So every time I get paid, let's just say I make $10,000, okay? And I simply have to have 16 people in there to make this $10,000. So every person that I add to the database is potentially worth $625 per year. Okay, and I would venture to say if you communicate with them strategically, my bet is that's slightly on the low end. Okay. We also know that somewhere around 10 to 12% of society will move every year, which probably means roughly 10 to 12% of your database will be moving every year. So if you have a database of, let's say, 300 people, and you're only aware of 8 of them that want to buy or sell this year, chances are there's probably another 20 or so deals in there that you're not aware of, right? Meaning every single day you should be digging through that database to figure out who has a goal to buy or sell or invest in a home that you're just not currently aware of. Okay. So the way that we're going to kind of segment our database, and I want to warn you that we can get super in the weeds with this really fast, right? So we could say, hey, I want to segment all my people that love wine. I want to segment all my people that love dogs. I want to segment all my football fans or whatever. And the question is why are we segmenting them? If you're thinking about segmenting a group of people, then you should have a specific targeted message that is intended to be delivered to those people, right? So segmenting people that, are football fans, unless you're going to have a football touch program, you're just creating more complexity than is necessary, right? So I'll tell you a little bit about how I've always segmented mine. I'm not telling you this is the only way to do it, just giving you a couple of ideas. I was not particularly detailed, surprisingly. So I took all the people in my database and I started to segment you in a couple of ways. Segmenting, another way of saying segmenting is tagging. Okay. So I tagged everyone in the database that I called it commission. So basically I had been paid to deliver real estate services to that person, whether they're a renter, a landlord, a buyer, a seller. I didn't get too much in the weeds. I just said, have I helped this person transact real estate? If so, I tagged them commission. So I could always sort for the people that I had been paid a commission to. And these are my biggest fans, right? These are the people that have allowed me an opportunity to help them. Okay. Any people that made a referral for me, connected me with somebody. I don't care if they ever did anything or not. If they had the willingness to connect me with somebody, I tagged them referral. Meaning these people have actually believed in my services so much that they were willing to share my information with somebody else. Okay. We have talked a little bit about locals and not locals. So I would have a, by the way, the only reason why I would tag somebody that gave me a referral is because that might be a list of somebody that I like do something cool for. So let's say, for example, I had some extra concert tickets or an extra football ticket, or, I had some type of event that was cool that that I wanted to go to but couldn't go to and had some extra tickets or something like that, right? I could send a message out to 3 or 4 people and say, hey, thought of you, who wants these extra Braves tickets or something, right? So the people that have been kindest to me, those are the people I want to be kindest to them, right? So a lot of us come from different parts of the country, and so we have a big database, but a lot of it isn't local. So I would just keep it simple and say out of area, right? So if let's say you come from New York and you got 40 people in your database from New York, right? They don't need necessarily, in my opinion, they don't need 36 touches and a bunch of local Atlanta market information. They want something that's relevant to them, right? So they could be on the Happy July 4th and Happy Valentine's Day and Happy Thanksgiving list, but it's not really necessary to send them the Chartmaster stuff on Metro Atlanta, right? You might have a couple of touches throughout the year on, hey, if you have real estate questions in your area, I can connect you with a local expert. Here's some national real estate trends, or, here's an announcement. We just hired a team member, or, just had a baby or whatever, like more personalized stuff you can send to them, but you have to be careful about the content you send because it might be too much and it might not be relevant. The second you start sending non-relevant information to your consumers, they're going to quit looking at your email. Okay. Which essentially requires that you start asking the questions, right? As your real estate resource, what type of information would you like? Right. And what Keller Williams determined in their research is they want hyper local real estate transactional data. What's my home worth? What's the neighbor selling their home for? What does it look like? How does it compare? That's the neighborhood nurture, basically. Okay. So I would tag, and of course we can do neighborhood nurtures out of the area too, right? So I would tag everyone in my database that was not local to Metro Atlanta, like out of area or something of that nature. That way, that they might should get a slightly different marketing message, and periodically they should be reminded about your referral network, right? So for example, remember, people love stories. So if you were to share a story about, hey, my friend Steve, who I went to college with, just bought a home in Phoenix, and because we had a great relationship, he trusted me and said, hey, Bill, I hear you're in real estate. I don't have a realtor in Phoenix. Who can you set me up with? I set him up with a great realtor in Phoenix. I get on the telephone with the guy, or Zoom, let's say, and tell the story. Hey, Steve, we know each other because we went to, college classes together or whatever. And, our families have been close over the years, and you trusted me with the opportunity to connect you with a great agent, and you had a great house and a great experience, right? Do you need an agent in your neighborhood or your city, right? Do you have questions about real estate? Don't know who to talk to? Call me. I can help you with that. That way you don't have to find some random person online. You can go to a trusted advisor who can make a great recommendation for you. Make sense? And you can share that type of story publicly. Yesterday, we talked about the importance of having an agent database, right? I would have a local agent database, and I would potentially have an out of area agent database too, right? So let's say Donna has a list of, let's say, 2025 non-local agents right now that she met at family reunion, and she's going to be touching them in a very systematic way over time. Yet they don't really care about her new listing in Woodstock, right? The 50 agents locally would care about that. You see what I'm saying? Or if she said, hey, I've got an extra ticket to family reunion, here's a little blurb about family reunion. Let me know if you'd like to go. That could be sent to the local agents, but not necessarily the other out of area agents. Does that make sense? And that could be a recruiting effort, for example. I would probably also have a list for people who do not currently own. So let's just call those renters, right? So they might get a specific message that's tailored around, affordability and interest rates and home buyer seminars and success stories about first-time home buyers and, down payment assistance program opportunities and, rent versus buy, marketing, that kind of stuff. So you see how it could go in a bunch of different directions depending on who you want to service. I do think that it's necessary, although I don't want you to get too much in the weeds with this, is to know where everyone came from. Like, I think it'd probably get a little messy in terms of tagging some people like cold calls, tagging some people open houses, tagging some people Facebook ads and that kind of thing. I might write it in the comments so I know, in the notes section, so I know where they came from. But I don't know that you need to get in the weeds too much with where the person came from. Like, you're not going to market to somebody differently if you met them at an open house versus you met them through a business to business relationship. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of the litmus test, is do I want to offer a different marketing message to this subgroup? And if so, I should tag it. If the marketing message is not going to be so much different, there's not much use in tagging. Does that make sense? And then the only other thing that popped into my mind when I was preparing for this morning was the pipeline, right? So what we've discussed in here is that everyone that you are in relationship with should be in the database. When you look at the database, there's a subset of people in the database that we'll call the pipeline. And these are people that want to or have expressed an interest in buying in the next 12 months or selling in the next 12 months. And these people are people that should have a little bit extra, they're like starred, so to speak, right? You could create opportunities for them. You should have a visual board where you can see how long that list is and how it's changing over time. So if I were to ask you, Markia, how many homes would you like to sell this year? And you say 10. And I say, well, how many people do you currently have in your pipeline? Meaning, who are those people, right? Or do you know of any of those people, or do you know any people that will be buying or selling in the next 12 months? And you were to say 1, the likelihood of you selling 10 homes this year is very small, right? So you need to always be looking at your goals versus how many people are in your pipeline to determine how aggressive you need to be in growing the pipeline. Make sense? With many of us, we have looked at between 2 and 3 people. By the way, Markia's got a pipeline that greatly exceeds her goal. She is crushing it. Y'all better watch out for her. Okay. My point is that we need to know at all times how those people's goals are shifting, right? Because literally every day, somebody should be coming onto that list. Somebody should be coming off of that list. Somebody who you thought was going to buy in May is now going to buy in September. Somebody that you thought was going to buy in September is now going to buy in May, right? There's a lot. It's a living document, right? My recommendation has been to take the number of units that you want to sell, multiply it by 3, and that should be the target size of your pipeline. If you do not have that number of people in your pipeline, then you should say to yourself, is the Bill Linkwald team or the Mary Steele team or entity the standard for a week's worth of work in real estate for us, or for me, is that I add blank number of people to my pipeline. 2, 3, 4, whatever. And that becomes the measure of success, right? If your goal is about building your pipeline, everything else will fall into place, right? You'll make all the calls you need to make. You'll make all the contacts you need to make. You'll book the appropriate appointments. You'll take the appropriate number of listings. You'll grow your database. You'll grow your pipeline. So if we can focus on, let's say, pipeline, and we say, hey, the goal is to build 3 people to my pipeline this week, everything else will fall into place. Y'all, does that make sense? There's a video on the pipeline that I created a couple months ago where we talked about ranking the pipeline. And the way that I suggested ranking it was, and this is maybe even a little bit in the weeds, but I said if it's 0 to like now to like 60 days, they should be a 10. 60 days to, let's say, 120 days, they should be a 9. 120 days to 180 days, they should be a 8. And 6 months to a year from now is when they plan to do business, they're a 7. And then you have a visual in front of you at all times. It could be like a cork board or a dry erase board or something like that. And it could be super simple, right? It could look like this, right? And you have, like, let's say, blue sticky notes here and green sticky notes here and yellow sticky notes here and pink sticky notes here. And it's got the person's name on it and when you expect them to buy or sell. And then throughout the day, you're moving hey, blue guy said he's now green. Okay, let's put him in the green. And that becomes your living pipeline. Now, I know that Command can do this. The trouble with Command is if you're behind, you're not going to go out of your way to log on to a tech platform to remind you that you're behind. okay? Which means that you're going to avoid reality until you run out of money, okay? I don't want you to avoid reality. I want it to look you right in the face, okay? This is your livelihood and your business and all the commitments you've made to your family. If you're behind on the size of your database or your pipeline, we got to fix it now. Let's not fix it in 6 months, right? Let's move the needle today. Okay, I think I'm off my soapbox. Does anyone want to suggest any other tagging? And let's have a conversation around that. Should I go back on my soapbox? Come on, guys. I gave you like 25-minute notice that we were going to be interactive today.
I like the soapbox. You can stay on it.
Well, Victoria, I appreciate you saying that. What's your biggest takeaway? What have you heard today?
My biggest takeaway is that I need to keep everything in front of me so I always know where I am. Because right now I think I'm behind, but I'm not really sure. So I probably need to just go do that visual really soon. And also just make sure that I'm following up with those clients and not focusing on the ones that are always interacting with me, but that I'm interacting with the people, that I cold call a month ago that said they may want to buy this year type deal. Yeah.
So I only, have you guys ever heard of the, what is it called? The 41 system or the 43 system? Pam, do you know what I'm talking about? I tried this one time. I bought all the folders. It looks so good for a little while. Hang on.
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Tell me a little more about it.
It's basically a system, and this is super antiquated, but it made sense to me. So we had 12 folders, January, February, March, April, etc. And then we had 31 subfolders, right, for the days of the month. So when somebody were to say, now this is before Command, right? Command can do this kind of thing. But if I'm on the phone with Pam and she says, hey, you're my guy, but I need you to call me in September, then I would write a note that says, call Pam Sliger in September. And then I go put it in the September folder, right? Or somebody says, call me on September 3rd, I'd write on there, call her September 3rd. Then when September came around, I'd open the September, which had a ton of notes in there of the random people I should call on the random days. And then I'd put all my date things in. And then I simply had to open up the file that says, hey, these are the 6 people I need to call today. Right.
Okay, a more modern version of that might be add it to your Google Calendar with alerts.
Yeah, or add it to Command with task updates.
With task updates, yeah.
Here's the potential for user error is you got to open it. If you don't open it, you don't get the alerts, right? Or if you just dismiss it, then it was a big waste of time. So what my suggestion is, or the way I handle that stuff now, is I've mentioned to you guys, if I have a day specific task, so like for example, here's my calendar. If it's a day specific task, I've got things like call this person, email that person, introduce this person to this person, that kind of stuff. But if it's a time sensitive task, it goes on the calendar. Now what I end up doing is if I need a reminder, I'm on WhatsApp all day saying, remind me to call Shalina on Tuesday. Remind me to call Greta on Wednesday. Remind me to send this email on February 1st. And it all goes on the calendar, most of the time on her calendar. And then every day she looks at her calendar and tells me what I need to remember to do. Okay. And she makes sure that I open up Command to remind myself what needs to get done. And she knows me, and she knows that I'm probably going to be like, yeah, I'll look at it later. And she's like, no, Bill, it's 10. I reminded you about all these things. And by the way, it's 11, and I'm sure you haven't done any of it yet. So here's the reminder again. You see what I'm saying? So you got to ask yourself, what reminders have you established so that nothing slips through the cracks. Because guys, the great and bad thing about our business is that we get paid a lot of money to help people buy and sell. Therefore, if we botch it or we let something slip through the cracks, it's expensive. It's a big loss. Right? So if I was on the phone with Mary, let's say, and I said, Mary, if you call me at 8:14 on September 1st, you get my business. If you don't call me at 8:15 on September 1st, you don't get my business. What are you going to do with this new information? How are you going to make certain that that does not slip through the cracks, right? So like Victoria alluded to, we got time for lead gen, but we also have time for lead follow-up. So we take the people in our pipeline or the promises that we've made or the active files, and we're tending to that. But we're only tending to that a couple of factors. Number one is because we know what is most critical, right? And we have a commitment and a standard for our business that we don't do that until lead gen's done. Lead gen comes first.
Bill, can I share the soapbox?
Yeah. Oh, am I back on the soapbox?
So just to tell everybody like what the results of lead gen follow-up are. So I actually made a list yesterday, and I was like running between showing and showing. I was like, I have to get this done. So I literally wrote out a list of names and numbers, and we're calling them on my way to a showing. And one of the guys that I called, I had talked to him about a month ago, random cold call. He wasn't interested. Yeah, you can keep in touch. And I called him, and he's like, yeah, everything I keep looking at, it's gone like in hours. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's like, why are you working with an agent? He's like, no. I'm like, well, how are you looking at the homes? And he's like, oh, I'm looking on Zillow. Bingo. So I was like, okay, perfect. I was like, he was like, well, I don't know where I'm going to move to. Ding, ding, ding. If anybody was in team meeting. He's like, I don't know where I'm going to move to, and I don't really want to buy if I can't move anywhere. Perfect segue to Knock and Homestead. I talked to him about that. I sent him a visual of it. And so now he's ready to buy.
Isn't that pretty amazing?
Pretty great.
You just got to ask a question. Remember how I told you guys yesterday, the average consumer has really no idea how this business works, right? They don't understand who represents who. They don't understand the difference between a KW listing and a Zillow listing. Like, they just want to see the house, right? So we have to teach our people how to be successful in these types of environments. Thank you for sharing that, Victoria. Who else wants to share? Any other any other tags that you guys have used successfully? Keep it simple now. Ben Kinney, the KW's #1 agent, he said a long time ago in a session I was in, he said, many agents like to complicate things so that they can have an excuse for not performing. Okay, it's simple. Are you local or are you not local, right? Do you own a home or do you not own a home, right? Do I need to talk to you about buying or selling? Let's not make it so complicated, right? We don't need to say, okay, we got a Green Bay Packers fan tag and we got a Chiefs fan tag. Like, it's just too much in the weeds. Who else? Who else wants to chat? You guys are, I should say, at the beginning of next time, we're not going to talk today. Then you guys will talk. Yeah, go ahead, Markia.
So in regards to tags and, trying to keep people organized, I would like to know if anybody have a copy of their whiteboard that has the numbers, the numbers, how you say 1 through 8 based off of the time frame. It's just kind of how they put it together. Or do you have an example?
I could draw kind of one up. Donna, are you pulling yours up? Oh man, look at that. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I was gonna say my people are not on here because I just recently changed my board and I'm touching base with them to see what's changed as far as their time frame. But this is what I have.
Yeah, and that is awesome.
Thank you, Donna, for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, guys, it can be super simple. Like you just buy, you know, those you get at like Target or whatever, the sticky notes that are the different color packs or whatever. You could just do like 10s are blues and 9s are green and pinks are 8 or whatever. And every time somebody switches their ranking, just switch their little thing. And I gotta tell you, if you walk into an office and you got a full pipeline, man, you just feel different, right? You're like, I'm gonna make some cash this year. I'm gonna help us some families. Let's get to work.
I
Bill,
had all my people in white and I'm recolor coding them, so that's why they're not on there.
Well, you're doing awesome, Donna. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
you.
Qantas, did you want to share?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too for Markia. I actually don't have mine on that board, but I have mine in an Excel sheet that I could share with her too. But it's similar to that, but I actually put notes for the columns, like the time that I talked to them, what properties I sent to them for the pipeline. So regardless of the cold calls that I make on the daily basis, this is just letting me know who's ready to go and what I've done to kind of like follow up with them and make sure that we stand in contact to try to find them somewhere immediately. So it's similar to that, but again, it's just a little bit more detailed on the Excel sheet.
Yeah, so
I
I appreciate you sharing that. I used both systems honestly when I was in kind of high gear of the business. And what I did is I had a sheet like Donna, so that, but it was super simple. It was basically rank and name, right? It wasn't designed to be like a repository for information or data, like Tawantis is referring to. When I wanted the data, I had a different system, which is, this is super, super old school. But what I did is I said, if we started talking, you got a sheet of paper, okay? And I put name, email, cell phone number. And over here, I put all the things I did for you, right? When we first started talking, when I sent you listings, when we met, who is your lender going to be, any details about your family that I needed to remember, all that stuff, right? I know Command can do a lot of this. I tended to be a paper person, okay? And then as our relationship developed, if I believed that I was going to get paid, then I created I put all your information in a manila folder. And instead of having a piece of paper, you were upgraded to a folder. And the folder then contained the sheet of paper with all the listing reports and all that kind of stuff that we had done together. And then all the people who had not yet earned a folder went in a folder, right? So the folder was basically the pipeline, and the manila folder was basically the 10s got that, because we were like ready to roll. We were active out looking at properties and that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? So that way, when I was, following up with leads, I just go to my manila folder. These are the people that are like almost ready to get going. And I'd start thumbing through it to make sure I wasn't missing anything. And I'd have a board up there to remind me if I was missing anything. Y'all follow that?
I have a question for Donna and Tawantis.
Yeah.
Do both of you guys have the people in your pipeline set up on like automatic search, or do you just give them access to the portal? Like what type of system like are you providing them to where you still have time to do everything else in your day?
So for me, yes, I do have some of them set up on an auto search in FMLS where they do have their own portal. One of those is just a lease and the others are buyers. So I have a few of them set up like that. The others, they're a little farther out, so I haven't gotten to that point with them yet. They're not ready to start looking yet.
That's exactly how I would handle it. Tawantis, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to share that. So Victoria, like on mine, it's more like Donna mentioned that some of them are set up like that because I know that they would be okay with actually just getting some of them directly from FMLS. But it really depends on the particular client, to be honest. And kind of what they're looking for specifically. Some people just like for you to give them a call and just say, hey, I found this, versus sometimes just sending something over is what I've noticed with, just depending on who you're working with. So some of them don't have that. And that's because I know those are ones that I have to kind of give a call on the phone and more so want to have a conversation and talk about whatever it is that I'm suggesting for them to go and look at.
You guys are
So
getting great feedback. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000%. Swan, because I had to have a conversation with one of my clients who's been pre-approved, and I have them set up on auto email, and like they just like to love something, and not every day that you log into FMLS. So I had a conversation with her and was just like, hey, when you like something, love something, send it to me in a text message or whatever, just so I know that you really like this home, rather than thinking that I just see everything that come that way. But I had that open communication, and she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, so that you don't miss out on nothing, or they don't think that you're just not paying attention.
Okay,
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Exactly where I want to go. Go ahead, Twan.
It wasn't me, that was someone else.
Oh, this is Ebony. What I also do is when I have my FMLS search, I BCC myself on it when I do their search, so I can see the ones that they heart, and I can reach out to them before they have a chance to reach out to me. And then for those people who are a little further in my pipeline, I still have them on an auto search, but I only do it once a month, because I got somebody, like literally I've been working with her for 6 months. And with me setting her up on a search for a month, she was just like, hey, I'm ready. And I'm like, okay, good. And she had so many other agents that she could have went with, but they weren't on top of it. And I just kept reaching out, and I'm looking at her homes, letting her know, hey, I like that one. This is a good one. And it kind of prompted her to move a little bit quickly to go see a lender.
All right, let me add to let me kind of wrap all this stuff up real quick, and then I gotta run to the leadership meeting. But you guys have given some fantastic ideas today. Every one of you is spot on. Okay. Number one, remember there's a lot of agents out there, and we all have access to the instant notification alert systems, right? That is not being all that unique. Okay, that is what I would consider a standard at best way of delivering the information, right? A better way to plus that is, like Ebony suggested, copy yourself on it too, so that you're aware of the listings as they're coming up, and frequently you're sending them a message outside of that portal that lets them know that you're actually paying attention, and you just didn't put this piece of technology in place so you could go play golf or whatever, right? So don't think that putting your buyer on a alert system is gonna win them over with uniqueness. Okay, it's good and it's important, but I'm gonna ask you to think about how you can plus that. Okay. I do also agree with, if somebody isn't going to buy until the fall, they don't need to be on an instant notification system every time something comes on the market today. Each day they could probably get a message, once a month or once every couple of weeks, and you want to jump in and say hello, pretty frequently as well. At the end of the day, guys, it's all about the experience, right? What is the experience like for the consumer working with you? And is there a chance that they could get a better experience elsewhere? Because if there is, they might go get it, right? So I don't mean to say that to scare you, but you should always be thinking to yourself, hey, I'm a business owner now. And what do I want my business to mean and represent, right? What are the standards of my business, right? What should the CEO, when you're the worker, be every once in a while, or pretty much all day? But at least once a week, we should leave the worker bee seat and go be the CEO, right? And say, how's my worker bee doing? Are they performing to the standards that I believe this brand represents? Do we add 10 people to the database every week? Do we add 3 people to the pipeline every week? Do we lead generate consistently? Do we practice our scripts? Are we networking with other agents? What's our commitment to learning, right? If you put standards out there and then you start pushing towards those standards, boy, you will see a whole different universe, right? So we have an opportunity every day to kind of react to everything the world puts at us, or we go out there and say, we're going to be intentional about how we're going to spend every minute and how every conversation is going to look, right? And what our goals are. Because the more systems and tools and order we can put into our business, the more freedom we can have outside of our business. And I've talked to literally thousands of agents about the business, and every single one of them wants freedom. Every one of them. Okay. The great part about that is you got to earn the freedom. You can not earn the freedom, and you can have as much freedom and flexibility as you want. You just won't have any income. Right. But if you want an income, you got to earn the freedom. Does that make sense? All right. Y'all have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.